So we've started to talk, Davina, about the AP role. In terms of having an AP team, what benefit do you feel that's brought to all the professional learning work that you've done, as opposed to having no resource at all?
Yeah, well, if you want to improve teaching, learning, and assessment, then it's obviously that you have got to have some resource available to help support you with your agenda, and to be able to get those messages out there. You know, it's so difficult to talk to all staff in one go. That's usually the privilege of the principal at the start of the staff development day. And then everybody's doing their own thing. But if you want to really drive quality improvement and not just quality assurance, it's not about weighing things. It's about looking at strategies to help teachers improve. And they're very, very busy individuals. They plan their sessions, they go into their classrooms, they've got their learners, they've got lots of problems from all of their learners to help support. So actually just getting people all together is very, very difficult. With the APs, then that agenda of quality improvement can be structured. There's been external support for how that can look. There's been all the coaching techniques. There's been people who can have a look at a bit of research. Mm-hmm. We can get together in terms of meetings once a month. Mm-hmm. I usually do that when we've had a curriculum management team meeting in the morning. So we've been perhaps talking about new initiatives coming into the college. And then it's about meeting with the APs in the afternoon and saying, right, this is where we're going next. This is where we're heading. How can we do that best? How do we make the messaging the most effective it can possibly be? What will teachers need staff development on? And there's great liaison between myself and our training and development manager, who actually provides the staff development in its structured format. We have 4 days a year, but then we also have a very rich digital staff development zone. APs, the Digital Blended Learning Champion, have contributed to that. And we also have our teachers toolkit. So there's a number of one-stop shops where teachers can go and find out that information. But having the APs has helped me to drive and deliver that out across the whole college. They then compare techniques. They are there to support each other as well. So at the moment, the newer APs have an experienced AP as a buddy,
great,
who's helping them. So, you know, if the role works well, then you're always seeing that new people are going to come into the team and then move on to promotions. So it's important, as you said, to have that talent management aspect to it, and to welcome the fact that you're not going to have a stable team, and that you are going to keep introducing new blood, fresh ideas, different approaches, new enthusiasm. And that, you know, that really lifts everybody. There's been some tricky times to go through, but the APs have kept, you know, very motivated and being able to do that in turn for their own colleagues.
Great. I really love that. I think the point about being a network really jumped out for me from what you said. I think when I work with AP leaders, I often say you really need to run the team as if you are the hub, as the quality lead, and you are having regular meetings with that AP group. You're pulling from them what they're hearing and seeing. You're diagnosing together what's needed, which you can then plan through CPD and other channels, and that you're connecting with curriculum teams to keep information flowing in to be able to respond. But that process is really supported by being in that network structure where they're meeting together to talk about what works, to talk about what they're hearing and seeing, and to have that support from yourself and that steering about messages that you're hearing coming down. So I think that network notion, really important for a successful AP team.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of listening to what teachers are seeing and feeling on the ground, the actual reality. And then that's very important for a quality manager, a teaching and learning manager, to be able to escalate anything that is the actual reality of what's happening in classrooms, rather than the perception of what should be happening. It's really useful to then send that up to the senior management team.
It's like the eyes and ears on the ground, I think.
Yeah.
You've mentioned several times the digital and blended learning champions. How does that work fit into the support for staff in the pandemic? And was that person an AP, or was that role a little bit different?
Yeah, but we were incredibly lucky to be successful with another bid through a Greater Manchester project, working for the DFE. So it was the LTE group that introduced this. 10 colleges in Greater Manchester were able to have 75% of the salary costs of a full-time digital blended learning champion.
Wow.
So we created that as a secondment. That started in October 2020. So it was a rapid reaction, really, to what all colleges were facing at the time. But that was, again, a super network for those people to be able to talk to each other, to come up with shared resources for how to get on Zoom, how to get on Teams, looking at all the more sophisticated mechanisms. We paid that at an advanced practitioner salary. So that DBLC reported to myself, worked with the APs, but wasn't actually doing any teaching. She then gained a promotion at Christmas just gone and moved to another college, really excited for her. And we finished off this latter part of the second year on the project with the head of area for maths, English and digital, who was once one of my advanced practitioners.
That's right.
So she's been able to step in and just see that through to the end of the project. Then it's about the college deciding whether we're going to have that role part-time, full-time going forward, whether we can manage that in some other way. Through that project, the second year of it was all about having digital learning champions in place. And we were lucky because, again, we'd thought of that already. So it's a small amount of remission we give, but we find a teacher who's particularly interested in the digital side. Per curriculum area, they get 15 hours remission per year. And they then again are that sort of coach who's in the staff room all the time, where the APs can only manage to come in for some of that time and work with colleagues. Then they're on the ground. They can show other teachers where the resources are, give them a quick demonstration. So I feel as we go forward, it would be really good to have someone who is still leading them, because it is logistically difficult to get 15 of them together, but you use the end of days, or you use the end of staff development day, or you use a digital meeting that others can look at afterwards. And that, again, has been really a useful network. And the two things have come together. They complemented each other, the Good to Great and the DBLC. But essentially now, to improve teaching, learning and assessment, it is about digital. It is about not dismissing other forms of strategy that can work just as well. You know, I hope Post-it notes will never disappear.
No, me either.
You know, you don't have to use digital unless it enhances or removes some of the workload. Just using digital for digital's sake isn't the answer. It's what do the learners need, and is there a tool or an app that can make that better? And, you know, just because you can use Wakelet, for example, would you use that every single session? Not necessarily. So, you know, we found they weave together. As the two projects ran alongside one another, then the digital blended learning champion could support APs when talking to the pairs or the triangles of teachers peer sharing and saying, have you thought about this? And, oh, that's interesting. And do you want me to pop in? And I'm not doing a formal observation, but let me see what you're trying to achieve, and I might be able to suggest something. So, you know, it is that it's trying to create a culture of, please come into my classroom, instead of, will you please stay out because you're not welcome. and that I can see that's really happened visibly. There are some departments, some teachers who will always feel quite anxious of another stranger in the room, but we've tried really hard to say your learners are assessing you all the time anyway.
Yeah.
You know, think of anyone coming in as another critical friend. Someone to you know, to provide you with some tips and pointers if you need them, or to say to you, right, yeah, that was so good, I want to take it away and try it myself.
Yeah, I think this role is fascinating. I love this notion that they're embedded in curriculum maybe in the future, and that they are the champion of that area of expertise, where they'll bring the enthusiasm, maybe they've got more knowledge, so that some of them are definitely playing a kind of a crossover between a coaching role for prompting reflection and planning, but also a mentoring role to share expertise that they might have, that maybe they're ahead of some teachers, and they're definitely enthusiasts. I've done a little bit of work training that group of people in the country, and they are a phenomenal resource for colleges to be using. And as you rightly said, I think it's about tech-enabled and tech-enhanced learning as we go forward. And that key role can really help teachers think about how you use technology to enhance and enable, as opposed to just to fix a problem or enable us to survive in a pandemic. So it's a much bigger piece of thinking, I think, as we go into next year. So I feel like DBLC roles, digital blended learning champion roles of different colours, will be very, very useful for people.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And they've helped certainly the APs develop their own digital skills whilst we have the full-time role. So I suppose the ideal scenario is that as time goes on, they become digitally expert themselves, and you could have a very, very much blended AP stroke DBLC role.
That's right. As expertise comes up in the sector, I suspect that's where we'll end up. But in most settings, I think at the moment we're having to take expertise, which might be coaching and mentoring on one side and maybe tech on the other. And then we're upskilling on the coaching for the ones who've got the tech, and for the ones who've got the coaching and mentoring, we're trying to go, and you could also do it with Padlet, you know? We're trying to bring the two roles up, if you like, in terms of expertise, to get that super creature of the future, if you like. So, challenges, Davina, as you've done all this kinds of work across the sector over these last 10 years that we've worked together, what have you particularly found as the key challenges as you develop professional learning in these ways?
Well, it's always the logistics, the time, the time and the timetables. So a lot of energy has to go into enthusing people to want to take part. A lot of time, you know, as project manager, and then, you know, from the advanced practitioners, always being the ones who might experience some hardship in their own classrooms, but then when trying to encourage others, you know, sell the positives, sell the benefits. But if you're going to get people together, then you've got to look at the timetables, you've got to look across curriculum areas, because it's always nice to share across curriculum, make it more interesting. Think of what's good in one department that might benefit another, and vice versa. So it does take time, it takes planning. You have to do a whole year plan. You then have to break it down into, you know, a termly plan. We've had booklets, we've had digital training aids to capture the journey and to give a structure to it. It's got to be launched. It's got to be sustained. So it's an awful lot of work, but it pays dividends. It's lovely we've done sort of follow-up walkthroughs to check where, for example, the questioning, has that improved? How does that teacher then feel? And they're so much better motivated when, you know, they feel they can do something themselves. They've observed something, they've had a go, and they have been able to have a positive impact on their learners. We check that through our learner voice. We look at our learning outcomes at the end of the year. Been very hard over the last couple of years with the CAGs and the tags because of COVID. But just that, the culture and the self-belief and the development of teaching staff and of advanced practitioners is just been an absolute joy to watch.
There's a real strong point there about the notion of a timeline. I think this sense of I think one of your strengths there at Bolton has been the capacity to plan quite big initiatives over quite big timeframes. I mean, I've sat with you and we've talked about 1 year, 2 year plans. We've chunked it down into sections. We've put milestones on there. We've thought about the launching, the getting the buy-in, the roles and the resourcing, but also the time allocation. Where would the time come for the meetings in curriculum teams? How often would we need that to happen? How would we use staff development days to support the process? I remember on the Good to Great, we did some of the training with the ambassadors on those days when we knew they'd all be available, which was a great way of actually making them free for that focus. So I think this project planning shape and the structure across time is a definite key thing to help people tackle that issue of time and shape. Tips then for others who are starting to work on professional learning, what kinds of things would you say?
Obviously, it's important, I think, to gain the SMT buy-in. You sometimes need to convince governors, senior managers that people learn without it being quantitative. That there is a qualitative approach. So, that belief in continuous CPD, a trust that most teachers are good and want to get even better. That's really critical, but it can remove a safety net of figures and charts and reports and that proof of positive impact in that very quantitative way.
It's more to impact than numbers.
Yeah, exactly. And that in the early days, especially I remember with Matt O'Leary and his talks and communication, and I helped present a conference he was running. You were there too. And I know at that time there was a lot of distrust in the sector that colleges would be able to go back and get this through with their own teams. But times have moved on. And I think with the new inspection framework, for example, where it's much more about asking teachers and learners rather than looking at charts and crazy pictures of different colours, that that lends itself to being a little bit braver in having this developmental culture. Tips and tricks. Well, we've talked quite a bit about effective project management. You've got to give that the time it deserves when there's an awful lot of other things that a quality manager might be asked to do. But it is a crucial part of the role, and we know TLA is just at the heart of everything. If you get that right, then everything else around it tends to improve from there. Certainly with yourself, you've been invaluable as a critical friend and developer of the project. So from the early days where you helped me to plan, then it was a case of, oh, right, well, next year I feel, I can be slightly more on my own. So, it was quite intensive, wasn't it, at first with Take a Chance on Change. Good to Great, you also helped just to make sure that we thought of everything. Hopwood Hall and Bolton College had thought of everything about how to collaborate, how to ensure we could visit each other at each other's colleges. And then year on year, that support, although invaluable through webinars, hasn't been quite as intensive. You learn to go a little bit more on your own, but your steer has been brilliant. I think, you constantly have to train and coach and empower the APs because they're going out with the messages. So they've got to feel really positive, can-do people. The DLP role, the digital lead practitioner, that's a lovely complementary role. It also means that you've got somebody in each team that can be turned to. And that's, I think the DLP and the AP role are very good models for talent management because APs have progressed to curriculum management or head of area level or even director level. So that's sort of giving you a strength for the future. And then you want to know from your teachers and from the learners, is it working? Well, what have they found? When you do an experiment, it doesn't always work. But it's actually empowering teachers to be able to say to their learners, do you know what, we're going to try this, and I'm going to ask you then, what do you think about it? And we go back to how we were doing it. Do we have this new way? Can you think of a way of making it even better? So it's been consultative with the learners as well, and you know, enabling them to give 365 feedback on their teaching, to suggest different ways that work for them. So the more learner voice, learner forums that you can have, you know, the better. But I guess it's you know, it's a lot of work, but it's about being dedicated to the cause. It's really rewarding when it works. And when there's setbacks, you have a team to talk it through and to say, right, we'll adapt it, we'll try something different. And we'll just keep going.
And you kind of learn as you go through that.